either validate or invalidate these charges. Some people feel we moved too fast, and some people feel that we moved too slowly. I think we moved at the right pace. We brought about fundamental changes, set up a women's bank to give economic opportunities to women, increased education expenditure by 70%, put an end to bonded labor and to child labor. There was substantive social progress in our time, in addition to what we did for the minorities.
So what went wrong?
What went wrong? What went wrong with 5 previous prime ministers? The inability to live by anti-democratic forces with democracy.
How soon do you think you'll be back at the helm in Pakistan?
Depends if there's a democracy or a dictatorship. If there is a democracy, on October 24th.
I'm joined now by Khalid Khuna, an MP in the MQM party. The MQM has opposed Benazir Bhutto's party in her home province of Sindh. In the last few months, there has been an escalation of violence. I'm sure you have your own ideas about whether Benazir Bhutto did or did not do well, but looking at how she was suddenly ousted, now it is constitutionally okay to do that, but it's surely a highly dubious provision in the Constitution whereby, as she says, the President can act as prosecutor, judge and jury and simply tip out the Prime Minister.
Well, it was not a tip out. It was all, as you said, it was in the Constitution, and the way she was going and the way she just said on the TV that she was going too slow or too fast. But I think as far as the corruption is concerned, she was going too fast. Her husband, Mr. Asif Zardari, minted tons and tons of money, and she was absolutely having no control on Sindh province, where the two segments of the society, one was a Sindh urban, another Sindh rural. This, especially for Sindh urban, I mean, there was nothing. Yes, she has said that she has done for the minorities, but she has not done anything for Karachi people, for Hyderabad.
I can understand that you oppose her, but the other point she brought up, it depends whether she said Pakistan remains a democracy or goes back to being a dictatorship. And there has been a very clear suspicion that the army may have been behind the move to oust her. What do you think yourself?
Well, I believe that election would be held on, as the President has announced, on 24th of October. But there is also another thing, which is they are going to brought to the books. I mean, those people who had done the corruption charges, and there are a lot of corruption charges. I mean, they have to be dealt with our judicial system.
Can I ask you how, as a politician in Pakistan, you can feel secure in a country where so easily the Prime Minister can be ousted by the President?
You're talking about the security of the Prime Minister
and the democratic process.
and the democratic. Here I'm talking about the security of the people who are living in Karachi.
So
I mean, we were not having support. And one thing I will tell you, Sheena, I'm an MP. I have given the vote to Benazir, and exactly after 3-4 months, the goons and the henchmen of Benazir Bhutto, they just beat me.
You don't fear the army?
Yes, it was her people.
You don't fear the army?
Yeah, I can think. I feel that army is not there. I mean, there is no army here.
Khalid Khuna, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We must take a break there. After that, another change of leadership, but not of style, in Singapore.
On East tonight, what future for democracy in Pakistan? We look at the rise and fall of Benazir Bhutto. And later in the programme, is this a solution for childless Asian couples?
Today marks the second anniversary of the unexplained death of Pakistan's military dictator, General Zia-ul-Haq. After 11 years of military rule, general elections in 1988 ushered in a flirtation with democracy. BeNazeer Bhutto came to power on a wave of popular support.
I want to make the best use of the time I have to give Pakistan a sense of unity and to give its people dignity.
Last week, she was unceremoniously dismissed as Prime Minister by Pakistan's President, Ghulam Ishaq Khan. After only 20 months of elected government, the future of Pakistan's democracy hangs in the balance once again. The President has appointed a caretaker government under opposition leader Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi, and elections have been called for the 24th of October. But while the often-feared military coup has not materialized, BeNazeer Bhutto has described her dismissal as a constitutional coup.
It is very much of a constitutional coup d'etat, in the sense that the President has acted within the limits of the Constitution. There has been no constitutional impropriety, but the fact is that he has been politically motivated, and therefore he has used his constitutional power to get rid of an elected Prime Minister who enjoys the confidence of the National Assembly.
Corruption, nepotism and undermining democratic institutions, these are the official reasons given for BeNazeer Bhutto's dismissal. But they are seen to be little more than a pretext for the army to reassert its authority.
The President sacked the Prime Minister of his own accord and has given his reasons why he did so. But we can be almost absolutely sure that he would not have done this without the backing of the armed forces. Despite the restoration of democracy, the army remains very influential in politics and continues to lay down the ground rules of Pakistan's politics.
In Pakistan today, the battle lines are drawn very clearly. There are two legacies that are at war with each other. There's General Zia's legacy, which is what I mean by the establishment. There is Shaheed Bhutto's legacy. Zia's legacy is authoritarian. It has the army on its side, the bureaucracy, the powerful establishment. Pakistan would be ruled by a strong center if that legacy were to have its way, and Islamic laws would be supreme laws of the land. Shaheed Bhutto's legacy, on the other hand, is a legacy of liberal politics, of democracy and representative politics. BeNazeer Bhutto represented that, and that is what the establishment could not stomach in the end, and that is what destroyed her.
BeNazeer Bhutto left the capital last week and returned to her home city of Karachi. Having attacked her dismissal as illegal and unconstitutional, she has declared her intention to fight back. BeNazeer is no stranger to the political wilderness. Her political education began when her father, Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was deposed by General Zia and then hanged. She became her father's political heir when she returned to Pakistan in 1985 in the hope of toppling the regime responsible for his execution. General Zia proved a formidable opponent, but in 1988 he announced that elections would be held in the autumn. His unexpected death in August of that year ended the longest rule in Pakistan's history. During the remaining weeks before the election, BeNazeer toured the country promising social and economic change.
भाई हमें बड़ी खुशी है बेनज़ीर के आने पर। वो हमारी लीडर हैं, हमारी बेटी हैं, कौम की बेटी हैं। वो ऐसी फ़ज़ा खुशहाल हुई है कि जो घुटन थी वो पहले हम महसूस करते थे, अब ऑक्सीजन मिली है। मेरी बहन है, मुझे पसंद है, मेरे भाइयों की बहन है, मेरी बहनों की बहन है, और सबसे अच्छे काम तो वही कर सकती हैं, और तो कोई नहीं कर सकता।
Although the Pakistan People's Party won 92 seats in the National Assembly, this fell 13 seats short of an absolute majority. The combined oppositions, the Islami Jamhuriye-e-Ittihad, the IJI, won 54 seats, and the Muhajir Qawmi movement, the MQM, took 13 seats. From the start, BeNazeer was forced to make compromises.
BeNazeer Bhutto assumed office in November 1988 when she accepted to play by the rules of the game that had been set by the Pakistani establishment. She agreed not to tamper with the armed forces' internal matters. She agreed not to change foreign policy. She agreed to be a good little girl.
The new Prime Minister also had to contend with the legacy of General Zia's policy of Islamicization. With Islam pervading every aspect of Pakistan's society, the power of the mullahs had increased. Benazir Bhutto had no option but to abandon her plans to end the enforcement of strict Islamic law, the Sharia. She fared no better on her economic policies and her plans to improve education. Literacy has actually fallen during her government.
It's been tragically very difficult for Mrs. Bhutto to achieve anything. She was a woman coming to power in an Islamic country. She had first to satisfy others of her Islamic credentials. She'd made a couple of visits to Saudi Arabia. She visited Iran. And she had an awful lot of Islamic fundamentalists in the opposition who felt that it was completely inappropriate for a woman to be in power. She also had the difficulty of the military veto on her own policies. She had very bad luck with the various conflicts that have taken place in Sindh and also in Baluchistan. She's had an economic situation which has been practically unbearable. She has had troubles in Kashmir on her border with India, and she still had to look on and not necessarily completely oversee a policy towards Afghanistan. Externally and internally, she's been under tremendous pressure, and sadly it's been very difficult for her actually to put any legislation at all through Parliament. So it's been 2 years of a holding operation.
There have been a large number of areas where Benazir Bhutto alienated the population. First and foremost was that she has been unable to cut back on defense expenditure, which meant that she has not been able to fulfill many of her social and economic promises which she made during the election. More importantly, she has singularly failed to tackle the ethnic crisis which has engulfed Sindh.
Tension turned to violence between the indigenous Sindhis and the Muhajirs, Muslims who migrated from India at the creation of Pakistan in 1947. This year alone, 800 have died in the violence. With the government unable to calm the situation, 25,000 troops have been deployed.
Benazir Bhutto had inherited a very serious ethnic problem in Sindh, and which obviously, being a politician, she has got many more constraints in dealing with that problem. It requires a political solution, whereas the military was adamant that they should be given full authority to set up summary military corps by which to deal with this. And I think it was that which brought about a rift between the two.
The political stagnation of the administration was accompanied by allegations of corruption, which centered particularly on Benazir's husband, Asif Zardari. Her nomination of her father-in-law to the position of chairman of the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly and the appointment of her mother, Begum Nusrat Bhutto, as deputy prime minister have given rise to charges of nepotism.
Benazir Bhutto's mother is an elected member of parliament, and therefore she has been appointed like in any democratic government. Indeed, there are many charges against her husband, Asif Zardari, but these have not yet been tested in any courts of law.
But her political opponents make far more serious allegations against the government.
क्योंकि पीपल्स पार्टी की गवर्नमेंट जो है वो करप्शन में, एब्डक्शंस में, किडनैपिंग फॉर रैंसम, लूटिंग, यानी इस किस्म के करप्शंस में इन्वॉल्व थी कि साहब बच्चा पाकिस्तान का जो है वो इस बात से वाकिफ हो चुका था कि पीपल्स पार्टी की गवर्नमेंट ने 20 माह के दौरान सिवाय मुल्क को लूटने के और कुछ नहीं किया है.
With her personal credibility at a low ebb, even among her own supporters, the opposition tabled a motion of no confidence in November last year. But after much political horse trading, Benazir managed to survive the vote.
Winning this vote of no confidence, it's a chance we have at pulling up our socks and making even a greater effort to preserve democratic institutions.
But her good intentions were not fulfilled, and she faced a second motion of no confidence in the National Assembly this week. Many observers believe the desire to preempt the vote played a part in the timing of the president's dismissal of her government and the dissolution of the National Assembly. There are also some signs that the long-running crisis in Sindh finally led to a break between Benazir and the military establishment.
For the last 4 or 5 weeks, the military in Pakistan has been very concerned about the rise of ethnic violence in Sindh, pitting against primarily Sindhi nationalists to Muhajirs, ethnic groups that have come in from India. They very much would have liked to see Article 245 of the Constitution implemented, by which martial law would take force in Sindh, giving the army greater powers. Bhutto for some time was trying to negotiate a compromise by which the army would be given greater police powers. These evidently broke down in the last few days, and the army decided that it had to ask the president to move in and try to replace Bhutto with someone more sympathetic to their point of view.
The government of Pakistan is now in the hands of a caretaker administration, led by Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi, who has been sworn in as Prime Minister. It's a sign of Benazir Bhutto's weakness that two prominent members of her party have defected and have accepted posts in the caretaker cabinet.
Mustafa Jatoi is a very experienced politician. He was a colleague of the late Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He has substantial political support, and indeed, in many respects, he has emerged as a viable opposition candidate who could successfully contest against Benazir Bhutto. He has also good relations with the armed forces and the establishment. And in many senses, he is much more acceptable to the civil-military bureaucracy in Pakistan than Benazir Bhutto is.
But Benazir still commands considerable popular support in the country. Although PPP candidates and her party organisation could face severe pressure as a result of government prosecutions, they're still a force to be reckoned with.
What we can safely say is that Benazir Bhutto's party still enjoys considerable support amongst the masses in the rural areas. Her party is still the best nationally organized party, and therefore it would be premature to write her off.
But a fair fight on the hustings is not the main obstacle to Benazir Bhutto's comeback. The real issue today is whether the most powerful institution in Pakistan, the army, will allow the elections to take place. Some observers believe the army's intention is to regain control over key areas of policy. On the home front, the military want a free hand to impose law and order in Sindh. In foreign policy, the army want Pakistan to give strong support to the fundamentalists in Afghanistan. And in Kashmir, they support the arming and training of Kashmiri militants opposed to Indian rule. As a result, the elections may be at risk if they are seen to threaten these objectives.
I think what the armed forces and the establishment will try and ascertain is whether the forthcoming elections which have been promised for October can bear results that would be to their liking, i.e. if Benazir Bhutto can somehow be marginalized, if her party can be split, or if she can be debarred from elections. If they're fairly sure of that, then I think elections will happen. If not, elections might be postponed, and if there are protests at the postponement of elections, then the army might well come back to power as martial law administrators.
With the army intent on stage managing the outcome of the democratic process, Benazir faces a political dilemma.
Benazir's options are very, very limited. She can indeed go to the court and try to have the action of the president tested, but that may or may not be effective. Her main options are really to mobilize public opinion, to bring popular pressure to bear on the government. Now here she is at a real disadvantage. If she launches a popular agitation, it will give military precisely the pretext they are looking for to cancel the election. On the other hand, if she sits back and waits, she may well find herself disqualified and barred from participating in the next elections. So either way, she's in a great difficulty.
Whatever course she takes, the future for democracy in Pakistan could well hinge upon the political fate of Benazir Bhutto.
Democracy is a very fragile animal in Pakistan now and for the last 2 years. What will be important in the first instance is for the process of democracy to be seen still to be alive. The elections held free and fair, and people allowed to campaign in a way which allowed their views properly to be understood by the electorate. But whatever government power will have great difficulty ruling without the agreement of the military, of the judiciary in some cases, and clearly of the important businessmen in the country as well.
Benazir Bhutto may have been incompetent in government, but she was a Democrat, and she represented the modern urges of our people. We stand on the threshold of the 21st century. It would be better to go into the 21st century with a modern leader at the helm of affairs rather than people who wish to dictate to us how we should live our lives.
Of her daughter Benazir Bhutto as Prime Minister. Speaking in London, she said she didn't believe elections would be held in October as promised by the country's president. Ms. Bhutto was sacked last week, only 20 months after becoming the first woman to lead a Muslim country. President Ghulam Ishaq Khan accused her government of corruption, nepotism and incompetence in dealing with the country's economic problems. Benazir Bhutto's Pakistan People's Party described the sacking as a constitutional coup backed by the army. They've spoken of witch hunts against Bhutto supporters. 12 of her associates are reported to have been arrested. The Bhutto family has been influential in Pakistani politics for over a century. Benazir's father, Ali Bhutto, was executed under General Zia's rule. His wife, Nusrat, was a senior minister. Nusrat Bhutto is still the chairman of the People's Party. She's now come to London, where I spoke to her earlier today and asked her what her daughter now intended to do.
She's going to go to the courts to prove that what President Ishaq has done, that is to dissolve the government, was illegal.
Do you fear for your daughter's safety now?
Yes, I do. I do fear for her safety because they can go to any lengths to finish the People's Party. But there's another newborn Bhutto who is only a few weeks old. So how many people are they going to kill and do away with?
One of the charges, one of the main charges that's been made against Benazir's party is that of nepotism.
As far as the nepotism, that's against me. But I am a politician in my own right. I was elected in 1977 to the parliament. I was elected this time with 96,000 votes, and my opponent got only 4,000 votes. You see, and the deposit was lost. So I'm in my own right. I'm the head of the People's Party. Why shouldn't she make me a minister?
What, therefore, about the widespread allegations of corruption?
There must have been corruption. Since 40 years, there has been corruption, not only among politicians, among civilians, among bureaucrats. There has been corruption. But as far as we are concerned, when there was corruption allegations against certain ministers, he tried to make inquiries.
It has said that he plans to hold elections in October. Will your daughter be in a position to stand for them?
Up till today, they haven't said that she couldn't. But I don't think in October they're going to hold elections anyways. I think they're going to have some excuse to postpone the elections. And, but they will have to hold elections. They may hold it after a year and a half, but they will have to hold elections.
If your daughter is not in a position to contest an election, perhaps there is not an election in October, what then is the future facing the Pakistani people?
Dictatorship.
The mother of Benazir Bhutto, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan. After the break, we continue our series looking at how we'll be living, or might be living, at the end of the century. After years of depopulation as people flock to the cities for work, now there's a real chance of reversing the flow. Small is beautiful in the high-tech world of information technology, which can be produced anywhere.